So we've done a few examples. We've shown how the general market kind of operates under basically these fundamental laws over and over again, at least in the examples that I've shown so far. And we've also understood that it's any time frame, any market, and that has really at this point should be solidified in your mind forever. And you should never have the feeling that you're basically missing a market or that you should be trading any one thing because you heard it from a mentor or an Instagram post or anything like that or a YouTube video, because it's not needed. That's not what a trader does. A trader understands how the market's moving in terms of the stuff that he looks for, context. He understands what the composite operator wants to get involved, something that you're learning to do right now and are going to keep learning. And then he gets himself positioned with proper risk defined, manages, and makes money. Okay, so here's another example. We're going to do this a little bit quicker. But again, as you look at this, where do your eyes go in terms of drawing the MBs? Where are the MBs? Where do they exist? And what happens from this move? So again, similarly, just like we just did, your MBs should be basically through this high, right? That could be an MB. That's like the easiest, bigger one. There's definitely MBs within it, right? Any of these highs to the low would be an example of an MB, any of these, including this one, right? Of course. Then, of course, after, in this case, instead of just taking off through that MB, right, this might have, so if you notice, like this comes through and then fails down, that means that likely, on a higher time frame, what is that kind of looking like, right? That's an open of a candle, comes down, makes that low, right? There's this right there. Then on the next candle, it might come up, comes up to this high and then comes down and kind of closes around here. So what's actually happening there is that next candle, as it comes down or whatever, right, it might open up. It looks like it comes up a little bit. So it actually like does something like this. So maybe it makes that wick, and then it ends up closing. Let's say it just ends up closing in here, right? So it just comes down, and then it closes around there, right? And does something like this, right? And then you just end up having a down, and then this is, oh, sorry. That next candle is an up candle, right? So it's actually, here, I'm just going to draw it next to it. So if that's the high, you have that down candle pushed down. So that's just the low, right? There's that down candle. And then the next candle, you can see it opens, right? Of course, like down here, because that's how we're thinking about the price, comes up to this high, kind of wicks through it, and maybe closes somewhere around here. So like this candle might end up closing like around there, but the wick looks like this, right? So this is one of those examples where, an up candle might become the demand of a higher time frame because this one was not able to have that demand validify itself, right? But then inside of that, once again, as we keep drawing these, so your eye should go to the ones that actually end up working, you have this overall MB that was forming. And again, within the overall forming MB, you should have earlier validified demand zones or MBs. So this one could be an example of that, or even better, this one could be an example of that, right? Right here, because in this scenario here, you have an MB that validifies itself within a larger unvalidified MB at the moment. And then what happens? Another MB forms right off of it and creates an overall move that never gets returned to. Because again, if we take this action and we draw it, right, you have a down candle, you have an up candle that probably validifies and closes maybe around here or here based on what time frame you look at for a higher time frame. And once again, you have validified demand and price never, returns to that price, and a true move comes out of that market, right? So those are good examples. And the reason I drew it like this is because, again, this exact example where you have unvalidified with a validified followed by another one is actually the exact example that we have here again. You have an overall unvalidified one yet, which is the higher time from demand. Inside of it, you have an earlier validified MB, and then another one starts forming, and that one could be forming under another unvalidified one, maybe like if there's something like this going on, right? That could be forming inside of another unvalidified one, just like this, right? But again, that lines up exactly for what we're doing. So like if we look at the exact example we're looking at here, that's what you're having happen out of this. You have the validified one here, MB, and MB forming, or that could be happening inside of this unvalidified one, right? So that's that example from the one just above that I just drew. So you can go back, pause it, look at it, go back, just see it, do it over and over again. You can even pause this and take a look yourself and see what other MBs you could find, because there's others, of course, right now that we're going to look at in a second. But these are all examples, right? So you could just use these if you want, just to make it clearer on yourself. There's, of course, an MB inside of here, right? You could call this an MB right here because it's made up of more than two candles. And you can notice now that we are looking at an MB made up of just two candles, neither of which is actually like a down push, but there's a high to a low, and it's more than one candle. So therefore, it's what we call a fractalized MB. But also, it's a simple MB. That's all it is. And that could be happening within the unvalidified MB here, right? That, because again, that's what you're seeing right now. That's all I'm trying to show you right now is that the price on repeat does a version of what you're seeing right here every single time. That's not what we're using just yet for trading or for entries, but it's giving you a proper understanding of how demand truly comes into a market, right? And then we can keep doing this, right? You have, for instance, this MB form right here, or like this one right here from the top, just like this, right? From just that high. So it pushes down, and then after it starts going higher, it forms another MB, and it's having that same thing happen within a potentially larger MB. Okay, you can keep doing this. Let's just keep going, right? There's other MBs you should have spotted as well. For instance, there's this MB, okay, from a high to a low, and that MB is happening within a prior unvalidified MB, and that's happening within this MB. And within that, after this one validifies, it actually begins to build this MB right here, or this MB right here, right? Because those all become potential opportunities for a long in this scenario here, right? Let me go like this. Yeah, so there you go, right? So, and again, you should all start seeing that there is the same thing playing out here, where within prior unvalidified, whether it's there or there or there, within prior unvalidified MBs, you start getting validified MBs followed by validified MBs that then go on to make moves, or validified MB within another unvalidified one, which then becomes validified, and this one's validified, and then you have another MB. All in the same idea here. You have a larger unvalidified MB. Within that MB, you start getting a validified MB and then a validified MB, all before this one becomes validified. And again, across multiple timeframes, that's higher timeframe demand zones being validated inside of this, because that becomes a validified demand zone maybe around here, right? This becomes a validified demand zone maybe around here, which validifies the bigger MB, which becomes a higher time frame, and later on, validified demand zone later as that time frame delivers. And then around maybe this point here, around here, that large MB, which would be this zone here, that unvalidified one earlier, becomes that validified demand of that higher time frame due to the candle closure. Because remember, we can't always know which candle it's happening on, which is why you're learning to think this way about price. And again, if I asked you, what time frame and what market is this happening on right now, you will not guess it, because it is Euro US dollar on the 45-minute. Who would have known? And again, you can see I've just marked up a few of those MBs prior, and you can see as I marked them up for you guys just now, a lot of them line up. They're a lot similar, and they all follow the same premise over and over and over again. That's what forms true demand. And now again, as we hop to a higher time frame and we kind of zoom out a little bit and we look at those same zones, and now in this case, we're looking at a Euro US dollar on the 4-hour, you can see how firsthand those same zones become validified demand zones, some of which price never reaches back to, and some of which price what the fuck, what am I saying? Price does, in some cases, reach back to, because that's going to happen. And then you can see on the 4-hour, at least, in the future, what happens. Price then, you can do this exercise for yourself. Price then starts to form larger unvalidified MBs, and within them become new validified MBs that then go on to make huge moves after validifying the other MBs, because all it's doing is validifying supply and demand, or in this case, validifying demand. And if I go to an even higher time frame, you see the exact same thing. All of a sudden, a lot of the zones don't fully line up. They don't fully showcase the exact principle of this every single time. Instead, they become broken up between a few candles. Some are just through the wicks of the candle, some are higher up, and then you get your very, very nice push off of the further validification of demand, right? Or of bigger MBs on a higher time frame that then don't get traded back to, and price takes off for a given move, right? And this actually right here is the Euro US dollar on the daily. Okay, so again, same exact things, just highlighting a few examples of MBs through a move. Now again, you can go and start trying to put this into practice, but again, I don't recommend it yet, because there are still a lot of things to cover. This is only the starting point. I need you to understand this. This is only the starting point of how markets move, and I hope that you've already taken more out of just these videos than you probably have in multiple years of your life of trading, if you've spent multiple years, in multiple courses that you probably spent thousands of dollars for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hope you've taken out more from this alone. And I suspect that you have, because again, I'm trying to show you firsthand what actually creates moves and trends and proper trends and how it operates, and that it happens on everything. Now we're going to talk about the stuff that I directly traded Next video, we're going to get even better at this and show examples of how it's kind of being used live by me, but it's not everything yet.